ourselves?
If you don't mind.
Okay, so I'm Lotta, and I'm head of Library, ICT Services and Archive at the Swedish School of Sport and Health Sciences. So it's not strictly medical, it's more health sciences. And Anniki, perhaps, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, my name is Anniki Roos and I'm the library director of Karolinska Institutet, which is a medical university, one of the best in the world, as you know, perhaps. I'm a Finn. I've been working in Sweden about 4.5 years now, so I have a Finnish background.
And Petra?
Petra.
My name is Petra Björk, like the Icelandic singer. I work at, Anniki is my manager actually, but when we wrote the chapter she wasn't, so it has been some while. I have a long experience from the clinical library at the university hospital as a library director, and then I changed back to KI after 10 years and became head of user support and teaching at the library.
All right, some background then. Well, this June I celebrate 30 years as a librarian, and over the years I've published articles and conference papers, and I think that was perhaps the reason why I was contacted by the publisher Health Information and Libraries Journal in 2012 to write an article in their series about the international trends in health librarianship, which I did together with 3 colleagues, one from Denmark, one from Norway, and one from Finland, not Anniki, about medical librarianship in the Nordic countries. And then 6 years later, they came back to me and asked if I could write a follow-up article. And then I teamed up with Anniki and Petra to write about medical librarianship in Sweden instead. And I think that was why we were contacted by the editors of the book to write, actually the same year. It was published in 2018, issue 3, and in October we were contacted by the editors of the book and asked if we would like to write this chapter. And well, we said yes, and here we are. And then I think Anniki or Petra will take over and talk about your subjects.
Well, I can talk about the leadership style in Sweden. In this book chapter, we have referred to studies that support the idea that there is a special Swedish leadership style. I'm going to go through some of the characters identified in these studies. The first one is participation. And it means that the staff is often, if not always, deeply involved in the decision-making process. Secondly, participation is not only one part of the phenomenon. There is aspiration to consensus too, and consensus is reached by emphasizing collaboration. And for this reason, working groups or teams are very commonly used in order to plan, execute, as well as complete and follow up various tasks. And good team spirit is something that is expected and highly appreciated. Partly because of that, the official organizational structure is often flat, not including many hierarchical levels. Instead, we have lots of meetings with various groups and teams, which could be an expression of some kind of unofficial hierarchy. As a result, decision-making will take some time, but there are opinions that due to this process, the quality of the decisions is better than it otherwise would be. Often, I would like to add, not every time. This kind of leadership style will strongly emphasize the importance of interpersonal relations. Maybe perhaps one more thing. It is not expected that a leader should solve all the problems. Or what would you say, Petra? No. But rather to coach employees to be able to find the solution by themselves. For this, the manager is expected to trust the employees. And this brings me to the last point of the Swedish leadership style. The most important task of the leader is seen to be to motivate and enable engagement by managers' own enthusiasm. So now you have got kind of a picture of characters of the leadership, Swedish leadership style. But Petra, would you like to continue to the union kind of things?
Yes, the trade unions, as I guess you may know, is very strong in Sweden, which we think is a good thing. Or I used to be one of the trade union representatives in my youth. And many of us is now managers, so it comes around. Well, we have a major impact in Sweden on leadership connected to the trade unions. In many areas in Sweden, almost the majority has some kind of trade unions. Also in university libraries, of course, which is all owned by the government. Universities in Sweden, very few are independent or private. But don't misunderstand how it works. Doesn't mean that the trade union get to decide or make decision that the employer don't approve of. It is rather an cooperation between employers and the employees. I've been speaking Swedish all day, so my English is a little, so I beg your pardon if I'm speaking too quickly. So the cooperation is that you have formal meetings, and you also have informal meetings where the employer uses the trade unions representatives to discuss certain problems or development of the library, for example. So even the difficult decisions that as an employer has to make will be easier on the employees, when discussing it firstly with the representatives to make sure that are we on the right track, or can we tweak it a bit or change it and then get what we want, and then we like hijack the trade unions sometimes, really. But I think we have a very good dialogue between management and the trade unions, especially here at the KIB, I would say. But also in my other workplaces, it has been working perfect, because we have also a very strong legislation in Sweden with different laws that we have to apply, no matter what kind of employer you are, government or private. And it's collective agreements which are adapted to the industry or the workplace, of course. And it's all from the salary, overtime, extra holidays, and you also have a discussion if you're going to change the assignment you have at the workplace, or if it's in certain areas. You also can discuss if Annika tells me you have to do this, then I have to have a proper discussion with her and my trade union if it's a big change from what I'm doing today or tomorrow. So I would say it's a kind of a safety net, both for employers and employees. So it's a good thing to have a strong union because you get different aspects of a problem, and you can, as an employer, make sure that you're making a good decision for the library or the university. And as I said before, dealing a difficult question or problem with the trade unions representatives make it easy to take the decision later. Yes, Lotta, do you have?
Yes. Sorry for disappearing. I'm having so much problems with my Wi-Fi today, so I just turned off my video because sometimes it helps. I was going to talk to you about career paths, and I think compared to many other countries, we don't have any clear career paths. We go to library school. We have 5
Sorry
different
about that. Sorry about that.
universities offering library, and you can study for a bachelor degree or a master's degree. And as we wrote in the chapter, there is usually not a big difference between when you have a job ad, when you look for staff, you don't differentiate between a master or a bachelor background. And it's the same when you work. You can have tasks. It doesn't matter what degree you have. Usually it more depends on your interests and experience and your personality, perhaps. It's the same with salary, not a huge difference, I'd say. And like we wrote in the chapter, we have very few PhDs in library and information science, and I think they mainly work at the universities, at the library and information science departments. And Annika is one of few, I think, with a degree, but yours is from Finland. We don't have any tenure track opportunities. It doesn't exist. And this sort of leads to not a lot of publishing. There's no reason to publish, basically. There's no benefit professionally to get a PhD. The career opportunities that are open to you is applying for a management position, middle management, or just changing jobs to do new things, to learn new things. And perhaps becoming a library director. I think that's it.
Well, thank you. Would you be willing to entertain some questions about what you've presented on, or maybe any other questions about the chapter?
I think that's why we're here.
Yeah,
Yes.
I hope so. Just want to make sure. So does anybody have any? I have a couple of questions, but I defer to whoever has a question first.
So something that spoke to me in your chapter was when the employees, like, you get together and you have like almost like a retreat, sort of, to I don't know, I guess if you would talk about library issues, you're talking about policies. I don't know exactly what are those meetings like, and how often do you do them? Do you close the library down when you have those kinds of things? It seemed like it would build a lot of camaraderie amongst staff and managers. So I was just kind of curious about that dynamic, and if you could talk a little bit more about that.
We have a different kind of meeting, and they are both formal and rather informal, because you get to know each other, to understand and how to develop the workplace in the way both management and employers would like it. And we sometimes have that we close the library if it's important, like we're talking about the vision and goals for 2030, or a certain avdelning. Vad heter det, Lotta? Department, sorry. Meet up for a day or sleep over somewhere where we join, both do professional things and social things to come together, because as Annika said, it's very important that you enjoy coming to work and identify you with yourself with the workplace. So it's both. And then if you just department, you don't have to close the library. The other ones helps up to do the support things.
At least once or twice a year.
Yes.
I think you have to have these kind of things.
And has that always been part of the culture, or is this a new thing? I'm just very curious about it, because I do feel like if you're happy in your workplace, you're going to be more productive. So I don't know if there's been any data on that, like since we've been doing this with our staff and managers, we've seen changes in our production. Yeah.
I don't think there have been, maybe it has, I don't know, research, but it's part of the Swedish model or the Swedish way of lead the workplace. So it's been like that for centuries.
Forever. Okay.
Decades,
right.
Yeah.
It's cultural.
Each culture.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's really
with the consensus.
Nice.
I think we all have to agree. A Swede think it's very difficult if someone disagree. We all have, isn't it, Annika? We all have to disagree, to agree that a decision is good, and it's very annoying and heartbreaking if someone doesn't agree with the decision. Stretch it a bit.
Yeah, stretching it a bit.
Thank you.
I have a question. Are libraries different in Finland from the libraries in Sweden? I guess maybe, is it Annika can address that?
Actually, not so much, but I could say that the leadership style, that how you lead and manage may differ. There is a saying that the Finnish management style sounds like management by damn, and the Swedish one, management by, oh, good heavens. That is the difference. More authority, I would say, not as much these kind of consensus. Leaders and managers have may have more authority in Finland, actually, as in Sweden. It has been a bit hard lesson for me, unfortunately. There is difference, but I think that quite many things are quite similar, because Finland was a part of Sweden many hundreds of years, so we have quite a similar legislation and quite many similar things. So maybe that culture is the main difference.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Question.
I believe that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. I just had a question about the leadership style in Sweden as well. It sounds very collaborative and very, I don't know, it seems like for especially new librarians, it's difficult to get into a management position or kind of find that track into a management position. Is it easier for new librarians in Sweden to kind of find their way into those positions because there's not so much stress on they're like the final decision maker, or they're like the final stop in the library, because it seems more collaborative? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It makes sense. Well, what do we say? I think it's perhaps as we wrote in the chapter, we've had a problem recruiting managers in academic libraries. So I think it has been easier for younger librarians new to the profession, to get into a managerial position because of lack of
Interest.
lack of interest.
Mm.
Many librarians, I think, are more interested in becoming experts in an area, like systematic reviews or something like that, instead of, they don't see themselves as potential managers.
I think this is quite interesting. I think it's not popular to be a manager in Sweden, in Swedish libraries. It's hard. It's demanding.
Mm.
Petra, what would you
Yes.
say?
I love it. So I'm the wrong person to ask. But
Yeah, but I know you love it, and I think I love it too. But there are so many other librarians who are not at all interested in it, because it's difficult. It's not easy in this kind of leadership style or this kind of culture, isn't it?
it's true. And I think, as Lotta said, many of our colleagues prefer to be the expert. And if you're the expert, you won't be questioned. And as a manager, you've been questioned every day, which is good, I think, because
Yes.
I wouldn't like to have yes sayer around me. I would like, yeah.
We could also add, I think, that perhaps 25 years ago, you became a manager of a department if you were the best, say, cataloger. You became the manager of the cataloging department. I think that changed in the past 25 years. And now when the managers are not the experts, it's the staff. They are the experts. And I'm not sure how it works in the US, but
yeah,
definitely. Go on, Anki.
Sorry about that, to interrupting, but I would like to ask you, sounds this familiar in the States? Do you have similar situation?
I believe it's very familiar, and I absolutely agree with Lotta that in the past, if you were the best in your field, you got moved to management because that's where the status and the money was. I think maybe some of the problem is, I worked for a pharmaceutical company and they recognized that early, and they started to pay their scientists commensurate with management. So there wasn't this competition to, you have to get out of science track in order to make the kind of money managers did. How much of that is our education? I mean, I always feel like management's maybe the most difficult thing. And I'm with your experts. I never wanted to do it, but I ended up doing it. I know a good manager when I see it, and it's rare. I think it's partly because we haven't quite spent the time on developing management skills that we develop in expertise. That's my opinion.
And I think a lot of it in academia and in health sciences and the academic side is based on seniority. So it's just, if you have been there a long time, you get the first stab at getting promoted to the manager positions. Katrina Kendrick Davis has done a lot about low morale experiences based on promotions that really have nothing to do with skill set for managing, but more to do with seniority. So she's a really good person to review her research on that in the States, because she really has done a lot on it, and is continuously doing surveys and things like that. So it's a very longitudinal approach to looking at that issue.
I think you've just pinpointed another difference when you say promoted into a managerial position, because here you don't get promoted, you apply. As you have to put out a job ad to everyone, and then you apply. And if you've been working in the library for a long time, it doesn't necessarily matter in your chances in getting the job.
That's really interesting. I mean, here most places you do have to put the job out, but it's kind of understood that a person in the institution is going to get it.
I wanted to jump in. One thing that the University of New Mexico has done for jobs in information technology, not in libraries, but in IT, is that they have created a separate job track for subject experts in information technology that is separate from the management track. And so we now have job descriptions and positions that people can apply for to get promotions as specialists in a certain area in information technology, like systems or support. And that's distinct from going into a managerial role in information technology. And I think it calls out the realization, at least in information technology, that the management skill set is different than the subject specialist skill set, and that both are needed in the environment to provide good information technology support to the campus. So not something that's done in libraries yet, but information technology is kind of a cousin of libraries. So it's something to think about for the future.
Yeah,
Quite near a cousin.
Yeah. But if you apply for a job here at a public university, all applications are available to the public, to anyone. So if I applied for a job and someone else gets the job, I can ask to see that person's application. And if I think I have more qualifications, I can put in an appeal and say, well, I have more qualifications. So it's not so easy to just take that person who is working in the library already. We're supposed to hire the best one.
Yes, on competence.
Yes.
I had a question from the mostly mystery stories that I read. It sounds like there has been a cultural change with a lot of immigration into Sweden in particular, and diversity here is now becoming a big issue, and recruiting for diversity and working successfully with diverse user populations is an issue too. So I'm kind of wondering how that's playing out where you are.
Well, not a big difference, I think. We also have to recruit for diversity, which is easier said than done when you're recruiting a librarian.
Yes, and the librarian in Sweden is not as big as in America, so we usually know each other as well.
Yeah, and like maybe 85% are women.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Sounds similar.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had a question. I was curious about the different degrees, bachelor's and master's. It doesn't sound like having a master's is particularly an advantage in terms of maybe job positions or salary or whatever. So, I mean, the reason someone would get a master's is just more for lifelong learning, or is there any, why someone would get a master's versus bachelor's in that situation?
Yeah, there is a reason, because if you get a bachelor, you can go directly to university after school and do a 3-year program, and then you're a librarian. But if you study something else, like I did, archaeology, and then I realized, okay, I can't get a job. What do I want to do? Librarianship. I add 2 years, and then I have a degree and I can get a professional job. So that's basically, I think for most people, that's what they do. They study something else and then they do the master on top of that. I don't think it's very common to do first a bachelor in library and information science and then a master.
And I think later the one you did, Lotta, and me as well. I read many years at university and thought political science and American history is not going to get me a job, so I need to be a librarian.
Exactly, that was, and well, a long time ago, over 30 years ago, you actually had to have not a degree, but you had to study 2 years at university before being able to apply to library school. That was the situation when I applied. So you had to have sort of a first degree, because the idea was that you know a subject, and then you can work in a library in connection to that subject area. But usually librarians have a background in social sciences or humanities, and not in medicine or technology, unfortunately.
Is Lotta, Petra, is it this degree in library and information science, is it a requirement in positions in Sweden now? Do you need to have a degree?
Actually, most adverts, when we were applying for a librarian, we ask for a master or bachelor or something that it's equal with it.
Yeah.
So, because you can have foreign education, which you can't really apply for a bachelor or a master, and you can show that you have experience, but you used to be a professor in social science, and then you have the experience enough. For example, we have friends as well, but people at the library who actually is not a librarian. They are nurses and doctors, and then just change the career and become not as well paid, but librarians.
But sorry, do they have to have a degree in library and information science? No. Okay, no. That was,
I think it depends on who's employing.
Yeah, and what kind of job they are going to do. Like, for instance, if you want to hire someone to work with the research data management, it doesn't have to be a librarian. It could be someone with a PhD, with lots of experience with data management, and who is interested to work in a library environment.
That was going to be my question. In the United States, large academic libraries are certainly moving in the direction of hiring other types of professionals like informaticists and data scientists and geographic information systems experts. How common is that to have other types of professionals integrated into the library organization?
I would say very common in the bigger libraries, university libraries. Yeah. You have your own developers and bibliometrics.
Statisticians and
physicians, cell biologists, for example, we have archaeologists. We have some like you, Lotta.
Like me. And I'm in such a small library, so I only have librarians.
Yeah. And that sort of goes along with that trend that you're seeing in an expertise class or an expert class, that, you know, the library information science person is expert in some sort of, you know, niche related to information retrieval, but then you've got the GIS person and you've got the records review person or whatever. So that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about it as that sort of division, but it's interesting. Thank you.
But I also think that our profession is a very broad profession. You can work in so many areas. I've recently hired 2 librarians, and one without experience from academic libraries. She started working in a public library, and then she went on to work in a school library. And then she wanted to learn more about academic libraries. And after like 6 months, she said that she couldn't anticipate how big the difference was between the different library types. She couldn't really, understand what she was going to learn when she moved into academia instead. So I think the profession is really wide. Without hiring experts from other fields, you can become an expert in a really small field and still be a librarian.
I was taken by a number of common themes that we do, across our types of libraries. And one of them was the importance that you stressed in aligning the library, not with what the library defines as important, but with the institutional priorities or goals or vision. And I was wondering, is that in terms of your home institutions here, the Swedish School of Sports Medicine and then Karolinska Institute, which I realize are different types of organizations. Do you have, is it very obvious where the overall institution is headed in these places? You mentioned that the schools have autonomy over their curriculum and so forth, but is this very transparent to you, so you know when you go to work each day what the institution is trying to achieve?
Yes.
Yes, I do. Yes, so it is.
They have these kind of retreats, and then the top management, they get together and put down the vision for the upcoming 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vision and strategy.
Yeah, we have a pamphlet.
Okay.
Only in Swedish only, so.
Well, in 2019 in June, I was there, as Lotta knows, I saw her then, but I wanted to go to Karolinska, and I think Annika and I were going to meet about faculty status for librarians, and they were on a retreat, but institution-wide retreat. It's gone. So, up with you. So, okay, thank you.
I was actually curious about the same general topic and themes. And one of the things that really struck me was where you said that unlike most of the discourse about libraries in other sectors, the medical library is not the center of the parent institution. And for this reason, change could be more easily achieved. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what you mean by it's not the center of the institution and how you perceive that that's different than other areas.
Annika.
Well, how could I explain? I think that we quite often hear that we library is supporting the main functions of the university. I have had today a discussion with the president and vice president of the university about open science things, and I've well, how could I express it? It was quite clear for me that it's my experience that it's not very good that the library director comes with a suggestion that the university should have open science task force. It should come from the researchers side, or kind of not from the library director or from the library. I don't know if this makes it clear, but it's so we hear all the time that we support, and that's very true. We support, but it's help me, Petra.
Yes, we are the support function for the research and the education of the university, of course. But the library also is it is easier for us as a neutral part of university. We don't do our own research, for example, so we don't fight for the same money, and we usually have the advantage of seeing what kind of problems are turning up on the horizon. For example, open science, open access. We've been nagging the university about this for years, and how the costs has changed from prenumeration. Lotta.
Licensing.
Buying the journals and going to open access, and it's been a blind eye. They don't understand what's the problem, and suddenly our budget is exploding because they think the open access thing should lay on the library, and suddenly we get a voice, which we've been yelling for years, and now finally the president and the vice president understand, this is what's happening. And of course they get frustrated when Annika points out this again, that this is a problem. We have to have a function finance for this research, since we are doing a lot of research at KI. And so it's a bit provoking, I think. But after a while, the president and the vice president are good people and good understanding researchers.
Absolutely.
And see the point of this.
And regarding your question, I think we also mean when we say that the library is not the center of the university, I think we refer to us being a service part of the university, which means that we try to leave the old-fashioned book guarding library sort of agenda, and instead try to realize that we have to stop doing things that are not sought after by our patrons.
We're not like the librarians that In the Name of the Rose. Have you seen the book?
Jorge.
Thank you. That actually speaks really directly to my question, and I appreciate all of those comments. I think it's as a library leader here in the United States, we're actually facing the same things, where we see ourselves kind of as the heart of the university because we serve and we partner with everyone. And so our mission is just so multifold that we're kind of in every component of it. And yet with these big issues like open access, it's like we're not even there. They're not even seeing us, and it takes so long. So even this morning, I was helping someone whose public access compliance was out of dates and for 10 years, and they hadn't done anything about it, and they hadn't thought to ask the library prior. So it's very, I think, similar to the situation that you're seeing, although with faculty status, I think that we have a further obligation, like here at University of New Mexico, to be drivers and not just service.
I think there's also a difference between the size of the university, because Karolinska Institute is huge compared to my really small, tiny university. And for me, it's often easier to promote things and, you know, to tell the top management we need to do this or that, because no one else is doing it.
I think actually that it's very important that researchers are involved, and I think that it's you can't do things at Karolinska without involving the most part of researchers. And it's something to do with independence of research work and independence of science and things like that. And I do actually appreciate very, very much our president, because he is doing great job and trying to to forward open science, and I think he's absolutely right that researchers have to be involved and they have to be active in this kind of. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Förankring, vad heter det? Hur säger man det på engelska? Ja.
I have to Google Translate.
Sorry, too late in the afternoon.
Long day.
Yeah.
It's very nice to hear that we actually have quite similar problems and challenges. So library life is quite similar all over the world, perhaps.
I had a question. Yeah, with so many similarities, and many times I was watching my colleagues and they were nodding as you were speaking. You know, in the United States, generally in academic health sciences, libraries, one incentive for someone to do research to contribute to the knowledge base of our profession is, as you mentioned at the outset, faculty status, and that gives you an incentive to do research. I would argue it's not the only. I wasn't expected to do research at my first faculty job, but I still did it. I think people tend to like it or not, but people will do it if there's an incentive for sure, whether it comes from grant money or protected time or so forth. But has there been any move in the Swedish academic health sciences libraries to develop your knowledge base? It seems that what I've seen, the research I've read, it seems to come from your library schools, your library and information science schools, and not from the practitioners. And could you take a minute to reflect on that for us?
I think the published work is very little still, but the gray material is huge.
Yes.
You do the reports, the analysis, and you publish it at conference or networking, but you seldom go and actually publish it. I know both Lotta and I have been spokeswomen in Sweden to get more people to publish in proper papers. And I always, my colleagues always laugh when they have an idea of develop something, and I say, oh, then maybe there could be an article afterwards. And then there's like, no, maybe just a presentation at the conference. And now, okay.
Yeah.
There is no that kind of tradition in Sweden, I think. No. It's not.
And no incentive.
No,
no.
Actually. Conference, I think that Karolinska Institute, that it's quite high quality practices and very systematic development, but it's not published. It's that I think we have quite a lot to report and go to conferences and things like that, but we don't. This is something that I have tried also during my period to as a manager to lyfta fram. You know, I'm a Finn, and I need to think Swedish, and then I have to translate it to English. So I'm very sorry about my difficulties with English. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Better than my difficulties with Swedish, which
I was thinking the same thing. Our Swedish would not be anything you'd want to hear.
There may be someone on the call who can speak some Swedish, though.
Yeah.
Maybe. I was wondering, now that you bring that up, you know, the whole model of publishing is kind of changing. And you're right, you're probably sitting on an incredible amount of expertise that's not being put in the traditional publishing venue, but what kind of access would another practitioner have to all that great stuff? You know, is it just Google the conference, or is there any kind of control over that literature?
For the gray
Well,
material, you mean? Well, as we said in the beginning, the Swedish Librarian Society is quite small in Sweden, especially university libraries. We know usually a few at every university. So when we have different kind of networks in special areas, and then you find out, oh, Lotta has this, and maybe we could do that together. And
yeah,
and we have a report done in the south of Sweden, and I get a copy of that. So it's very personal, unfortunately.
yeah. And I think Annika and I, we meet up with the other library directors from the university libraries in Sweden, and we're like 43.
Something like that.
We know everyone. So it's, and we have this Teams
Network.
group, Teams group where we can talk with our colleagues at the other university libraries. So it's really, really easy to find out if someone has done something on a topic that I would like to explore.
But we use Swedish, and if you're interested in the discussions, you unfortunately are not able to understand. So I think it's a bit problem that we are so introvert, you know. So
Well, I'll
unfortunately.
just say I see librarians from Karolinska in particular posting on the expert searching listserv all the time. So I have been benefiting from a lot of their knowledge, I know. So much appreciated that gray source of literature is out there. And I got an opportunity to meet when I worked at Mayo Clinic with Carl and Susanna and Klaus. And so I've stayed in touch with Klaus a little, or with Carl actually a little bit since then, and it's really always nice to see the three of them pop up on the expert searching listserv.
Great. Nice
but
to
you
hear.
know, publishing is not very encouraged either. When I applied for the job I have now, I of course submitted my CV and with my published articles, etc. And my boss to be told me that, well, you have to realize if you get this job, you won't be able to publish that much. So it was like sort of suspicious that I had published.
Have you really been working?
Yes. She said, I want your full attention on the job. Wow.
Well, you know, I suppose every profession has some of those tensions, you know, even in medicine. You know, if I were a departmental chair of internal medicine and somebody was publishing a lot, I'd be wondering, are they really taking care of my patients too? So, I mean, it has to be a balance, but of course, in an academic institution, a faculty member would be expected to publish. And so I guess sort of following up on my other question is like, do you see that your community of Swedish librarians is enlarged, and do you feel you benefit from your association with EHIL, the European Association of Health and Information? Do you find that EHIL is something that you turn to maybe find other experts to understand a subject or to learn about something?
I think Swedish librarians do. I can't answer because I'm the president, so I'm very biased.
I can answer because I'm right now I'm the communication officer for the IL. But before that, I wouldn't say I use personal contacts who I met through Yale, but not as a group. So.
And I'm looking across the Atlantic Ocean. I think that NLM is doing great job, and the Medical Library Association. It's very, very important for us too. I think it's the most important in this earth to medical librarianship, actually. This is my opinion.
I think I will have to leave.
I was just going to say we are just about out of time.
Time
I
flew
really,
by.
I wanted to thank you, Lotta and Petra and Annika, for your time, because you came at the end of your workday to be with us. So we really do appreciate it. And thank you.
Thank you for inviting
Thank
us.
you. It was good fun.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Tack så mycket.
Bye-bye.
It was
Bye.
our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Hey.
Bye-bye. Tack.